eventually, I hope. Chapter 12, there's only 14 chapters, so as soon as I finish 12, 13, and 14, we're going to start counseling. And I know Edison's done his, but Curtis hasn't. I have no clue who Curtis is going to be in the near future.
Did you send us a new template for the, is that the one for this one? This one?
Yeah,
That's no longer this one?
yeah, you need to figure out.
Oh, also, we can still use this one.
You've given me that?
No, do we still use this one? 'Cause
Yeah,
I know you sent
that's
it to-
fine. It doesn't really make any difference. I figured a way to use either one.
Oh, okay.
I know, I'm so brilliant. It only took me like half the semester worrying about this stuff. Yeah, so, yeah, we can use either one. Yeah, what I'm doing is this is how brilliant I am. I'm downloading it as a PDF. Okay. And that way I can put it both online and I'll have a hard copy of it. I know. So you turn into anything that you've got, anything that you want. Have you decided what your character's problem is going to be?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So when do you need this as soon as possible?
By the time we start.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, I need your paper too. The paper has to do with the problem your client has, or your character has. Okay. Yeah, so everybody out there, I only have 7, I think. Well, I only have 7 out of about 36, so we're a little behind. Just a tad, and we are going to do this. And if you don't have a character, then you can't do it. And of course, that's one of the aspects of this class is practice counseling. So if you don't have a character, you can't practice counseling. So what are we looking at today? We're looking at identifying key problems or challenges. If I can get rid of that. There we go. This can really be complicated because a lot of times the client is going to be in denial. A lot of times they're not ready to talk about this problem. They want to talk about another problem. So this can be a really, really strange situation. Does that not taste right?
No. It's the first time I'm trying it.
Maybe it's got a mouse in the bottom or something. The process of coming to an agreement on problems and goals involves a thoughtful and complete assessment, of course. And this is kind of tough because they're going to try to not give you the information that you need. Because it may be too painful, it may be embarrassing. They just don't want to talk about it. So you're going to have to pull it out of them as, you're going to have to pull it out of them. It's really kind of bizarre. Harassing me. There we go. It is important to work on what the client is ready to solve, not what the practitioner might think is important. And of course, that's where you are as well. They may have a more serious problem, a problem that you know you need to deal with, but if they don't want to deal with it, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. You need to deal with whatever they're ready to take care of. And so some of the questions that you can ask them trying to get to this point is, what is the extent of your problem? How is the problem affecting your life? How long has this problem been in existence? How frequently does this problem happen and how bad does it get? What is the cause of your problem? Are you living in an environment that will allow the problem to return? And of course, this is the biggest problem that we see, is the fact that they're living in an environment where, yeah, it's going to be repeated over and over and over again. They're going to be, let's say their problem is, well, I told you the story of the young lady that every time she went to Great Falls, she used crystal meth. And so her problem was, if she got into that environment, that she would start using again. And so what she needed to do is stay away from that environment. Well, that was okay. She had 2 kids back at Belknap that she needed to take care of. And she didn't go to Great Falls very often, or she wouldn't have. And then things started pulling her in that direction. her father had an accident, and so she had to go down and visit her father. Then her father died, and the funeral wasn't at Belknap. It was down in Great Falls. So she kept having to go back. Then her mother was down in Great Falls. She didn't live with her mother. She didn't like her mother. She didn't want to have anything to do with her mother. But of course, after her father died, she had no excuse not to go back to visit her mother. Anyway, so the environment is a really serious problem, and sometimes that's what you need to do. Sometimes the problem is the environment, not especially the individual. Is the problem worse because you haven't dealt with it? And of course, if we're dealing with, well, there's a lot of different problems that can be worse if you don't even talk about them. Alcoholism, drug abuse, all of those things get worse and worse and worse as time goes by. Is this a superficial problem or one that goes deeper, requiring extensive therapy? This can be really important because how long are we going to deal with this problem? How long can we deal with this, or will we be dealing with this? Do you have enough insurance to pay for it? And we're going to talk about that in just a second. How urgent is it that the problem be solved? Aaron, you're moving better. It's my own personal opinion. Is it possible that the problem is the symptom of a more serious problem? And of course, this is very, very common. This is the problem they want to deal with, but the reality is the problem goes even deeper, and it is a totally different problem, but one that needs to be taken care of, one that has to be taken care of. The biggest problem that we have is a lot of times we will deal with situations, and the situation is just pointing in another direction. And until we can cure that problem, this problem isn't going to go away. The more superficial problem isn't going to go away. So, of course, that's one way to look at it. Considerations of any problem include the financial remuneration. I put that right on top, or they put it right on top, because the reality is that your job and the way that you survive and feed your family is by charging people money. That's the way it works. You're not doing this for fun or grins. You're doing it to make money. So the question is, will they be able to pay for it? Huge question. Does insurance pay for it? If insurance doesn't pay for it, what's going to happen next? Do they have enough income to take care of it? You can't do things for free, or you can do things for free if you like, but eventually your family's going to starve to death, and that's not good. Your car's going to break down. You're going to have to start walking the 15 miles from your job to home. So financial remuneration is real, and it's probably the realest situation in the United States. We're trying to do away, I don't know what's going on with health care. We used to have the ACA, but I'm not exactly sure if we have it anymore because the subsidies have been taken away by the current president, who wants to revise things. Well, if he revises things, is that going to include mental health? Is mental health going to be part of this? And if mental health isn't part of it, what happens next? Right now, it is kind of part of the ACA, but he wants to do away completely with the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. So we'll see what happens. Everything is completely up in the air, and mental health is at the bottom of anything that people are thinking about. Mainly because mental health usually isn't terminal. So we need to take care of terminal diseases before we start taking care of mental health in the United States. Does the client have enough time to take care of this? They may have to come in every day. This problem is severe enough that I need to see you every day. And the question is, do you have time? The other question is, do I have time? I've got 57 other clients. Can I take I may have to start working on Saturday and Sunday. Do I have time to do that? Can I do that? Is that possible? Since I have a conference next week, and then I have to go to Thanksgiving, I was going to go home with my family, you know, that kind of stuff takes place. Do I have time? Do you have time? That's a huge question. The practitioner might have to act without fully exploring all problems due to crisis status. The first thing that you need to take care of is the crisis. If there is a crisis you need to take care of, you need to solve that problem first. If you have a drinking problem, that's fine, but if you've got a bleeding ulcer, we need to take care of the bleeding ulcer. Because if I'm dealing with your alcoholism, but you're bleeding to death, it's really important that we keep you from dying before we worry about stopping you from drinking. Can I tell you a story about somebody that died? Will that irritate people? Okay, good. Once upon a time in a land far, far away.
Is 13?
12.
12.
Once upon a time in a land far, far away, I was working in blood bank. Actually, I was the night tech. I was the graveyard tech. So one of the guys, so they called down for blood, and they said, you better cross-match all your units. And I was going, what? What's going on? What do you have, a bleeder up there? And they said, yeah, we got a bleeder. This guy had a stomach ulcer, and it had ruptured. And so what we were doing, we were pumping blood into this guy. And they were trying to stop the ulcer from, it was hemorrhaging. And what they did, they made him swallow ice chips so that he would get ice into his stomach, and that would slow down the bleeding. So we did this all night long. Ice chips all night long. They're force feeding him ice chips and pumping blood into him because it's just coming right back out. So finally we got it done, and it was an amazing night. I cross-matched he was O positive, and I not only cross-matched all the O positive blood, but I also cross-matched all the AB positive blood. I cross-matched all the O negative blood that we had. And he used up everything. He drank our entire blood bank that night. Yeah, I know, it was terrible. And it's tough when you have to when it's not type specific. O positive was easy, there was no problem with that. But the AB negative, the AB negative wasn't it? And the AB positive, we only had a couple of units of each one. And the O negative, that was a tough one. So I'm working on this guy all night long. It was terrible. And it started, I cross-matched blood for probably 12 hours straight. It was crazy. Anyway, we finally got him stabilized. He finally stopped bleeding. They finally stopped feeding him ice chips. But the way that they got him to swallow the ice chips was they promised him that they'd let him out of ICU. And I'm pissed. I'm pissed because I started a cross match just before it was time for me to leave, so I had to finish it. You can't, you have to finish. So I was 2 hours late getting home. Just a ton of stuff, and so I was pretty upset. I've been cross-matching this guy all night, and then in between we had all this emergency room stuff that was taking place. Unfortunately, it was like Friday night, and of course this is on a military base, and all the drunks, all the guys had a good time, and got in fights, of course. So I'm cross-matching blood for them, and we're processing drug, urines and whatnot. It was just a horrible, horrible night. And I'm cross-matching blood for this guy, and finally we got it taken care of. And then they let him out of the hospital. And the next thing I know, I'm checking this guy into the morgue. Well, he was an alcoholic, yeah. So, and the reason he had a bleeding ulcer was because he was a drinker. And so what does he do? He goes out on a bender and he starts hemorrhaging again. And of course he bleeds to death. And so I had to check him into the morgue. The point was that he was in crisis, and what they needed to do was not let him out. They needed to lock the guy up so he couldn't drink anymore. But no, instead they had to let him out of the hospital. Of course, this is military, so you got to do what you can't just make a deal with somebody and then not do it. That's just not the way it works. Anyway, he died the next night. It was really kind of crazy. So actually it was the next time I came in. And I had, so that was 3 days. 3 days later I checked into the morgue, which was kind of irritating, more than irritating, since I had just, bastard. And then he died. He drank himself to death. I don't know what they thought he was going to do. Yeah, I was going to go visit his family. Yeah, right. That wasn't going to happen. The immediate crisis situation will have to be dealt with first before you can address other problems. And his immediate crisis was pumping blood into him. And they didn't even deal with the other problems. Of course, this was the military 45 years ago, 40 years ago. And of course, they didn't think beyond right now. And that's why they let him out of the hospital. I mean, it wasn't any of their business what he was going to do. And of course, they could order him not to drink, but that, you can't really order somebody not to do something like that. We used to have a safety briefing before every vacation. If it was in the summertime, they always ordered us not to go and get a sunburn.